Las Vegas, winter of 1974. The lights burned hot on stage, but down in the front row, one young fan sat shivering, arms crossed tight. Halfway through the song, Elvis spotted her. He stopped mid-verse, staring into the crowd. Then he did something no one expected. If stories of kindness from legends like Elvis touch you, stay with us. You won't believe how this single moment grew into something the world still talks about today. The brass hadn't even finished the first note before the room shook. 1,000 fans jumped to their feet, hands raised, screaming his name. And yet, amid the chaos, Elvis's eyes snagged on something that didn't belong. The Las Vegas showroom, winter of 1974. Spotlights swept across red velvet seats and mirrored walls. Programs rustled. The hiss of the amplifiers bled under the opening chords. Ushers tried to wave latecomers into rows already packed shoulder to shoulder. Cigarette smoke curled into the light beams above the stage. Then the curtain split. Elvis stepped out. White jumpsuit, rhinestones catching every flashbulb. The band slammed into CC Rider. The floor shook with stomps and claps. Fans surged forward, holding cardboard signs painted with lipstick and glitter. Some screamed his name, others simply wept, cameras snapping in frantic bursts. For most, this was the night they'd waited years to see the king alive, only feet away. But for one person, the night began differently. Down in the front row, a young girl sat hunched inside a cardigan that was far too thin. She rubbed her arms against the chill that drifted through the air conditioning. Her teeth pressed into her lip, but the tremor in her hands gave her away. While thousands shouted, she barely moved. And that's when Elvis saw her. Witnesses say his head turned sharply mid-verse. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the row. He sang the next line almost automatically, but his gaze didn't leave the girl. The spotlight shifted, and for a split second, it caught the pale outline of her breath in the cold air. The crowd didn't notice at first. To them, he was still Elvis, hips swaying, microphone tight in his hand. But if you were close enough, you could see it. His rhythm faltered by half a beat. His left hand stopped its usual flourish. Instead, it curled at his side, clenched as though holding back a decision. Something in him was unsettled. It's been told that Elvis never missed details, never let a face or a feeling slip past him in a crowd. Tonight proved it. He wasn't looking at the flashing signs or the women reaching toward him. He was staring at one girl who looked like she didn't belong in this storm of heat and noise. And in that moment, the audience didn't yet know that everything about the show was about to change. He finished the verse. The band prepared to drive into the chorus. But Elvis didn't move to his mark. He didn't spin the mic stand as he always did. Instead, he paused just long enough for his band to sense something was off. A trumpet player dropped his eyes. Nervously, the drummer's sticks hovered mid-air. Elvis adjusted the mic, glanced once more at the girl, then stepped downstage. The floor monitors squealed as he left their range. The crowd roared, thinking he was coming closer to them for a thrill. But that wasn't it. He walked straight toward her. The music broke first not with a crack, but with silence. A silence so heavy it seemed to fall from the ceiling. 2,000 people froze, mid-cheer, mid-breath. Elvis raised his hand. Just a small gesture, but the band reacted instantly. Trumpets cut off mid-blast. Guitar strings hummed into stillness. The drummers' sticks hovered in the air, never landing. The sudden quiet rang louder than the music itself. Audience voices died in confusion. A ripple of whispers spread through the showroom. What happened? Was it a mistake? Is he all right? Ushers at the back stiffened. They had been trained to move fast if something went wrong, if a fight broke out, or a fan tried to rush the stage. But this wasn't that. No one moved. Everyone watched. Elvis stepped toward the edge of the stage. His boots thudded softly against the wooden riser, each step amplified in the hush. The spotlight followed, throwing sharp shadows against the shimmering backdrop from the second row. Fans swore they saw his expression change. His usual stage grin was gone. Instead, his eyes locked on the girl, the one in the cardigan, her. Shoulders hunched, hands trembling in her lap. She blinked up at him, stunned, almost afraid to breathe. Around her, fans pressed forward, straining to see what Elvis was doing. None of them knew why the concert had stopped, only that it had. He crouched low, microphone dangling loosely in his hand. Witnesses recall that his voice was barely audible. A few words lost to the crowd. Some say, he asked, "You cold, honey?" Others remember only the way his eyes softened. The girl's lips parted, but no sound came. Her fingers clutched the sleeves of her cardigan as if to prove his question right. A gasp spread across the audience. The realization hit. Elvis Presley, the man who never missed a cue, who could sing through anything, had just stopped the entire show for one trembling fan. For a moment, it felt like time slowed. You could hear the faint buzz of the amplifiers, the squeak of a chair as someone leaned forward, even the clink of an ice cube in a glass near the bar. And then Elvis moved. He shifted the microphone to his other hand. With his right, he reached for the zipper of his jacket. The white fabric shimmered under the lights, heavy with rhinestones and sequins. Every camera in the room turned toward him. He pulled the zipper down slowly, almost deliberately. The sound carried faintly through the speaker's metal teeth parting. A sharp rasp in the silence. Whispers turned to gasps. Some fans cried out his name, urging him to go on with the show. But Elvis wasn't listening. His eyes stayed on the girl, steady and unblinking. One woman near the front clutched her husband's arm and whispered, "He's going to give it to her." The idea alone was electrifying. Elvis stage jackets weren't costumes, they were symbols. Fans fought just to touch the edge of his scarf. To give away a jacket in the middle of a performance was unthinkable. And yet, here he was, sliding, one shoulder free, then the other. He held the jacket in his hands, heavy, glittering, unforgettable. The crowd leaned forward, an ocean of faces waiting to see if he would actually do it. The jacket slid from his shoulders, and in that instant, the audience knew this was no stage trick. Elvis Presley was about to give away a piece of himself. He held the jacket in both hands, the rhinestones catching every spotlight. For a heartbeat, it looked almost too heavy to give up. This was more than cloth, it was the armor he wore under the glare of thousands. Fans knew each design by heart. The flared cuffs, the eagle stitched across the back, the way the white fabric glowed against his tan dot. And then, without another word, he stepped off the riser. Gasps rippled through the showroom. A few fans screamed, thinking he might actually walk into the crowd. Security guards at the wings tensed, shifting nervously, but Elvis brushed right past them. His boots clattered against the lower steps, the noise echoing in the cavern of silence. The girl's eyes widened. She looked left, then right, as if certain someone else was the real focus. But no, Elvis' gaze was fixed only on her. When he reached her row, he leaned down. Slowly, gently, he draped the jacket across her shoulders. It swallowed her whole. the sleeves hanging far past her hands, the collar nearly up to her chin. The crowd roared, an explosion of sound after minutes of suffocating quiet. Flashbulbs erupted like lightning across the hall. She clutched the fabric, stunned. Her lips trembled. Witnesses recalled tears pooling in her eyes as she mouthed the words. "Thank you," Elvis smiled. Not the wide, stage-ready grin, but a smaller one, softer, private. He bent close, his voice lost in the roar, and whispered something only she could hear. "Some fans later swore," he said, "stay warm, darlin'. Others insist it was just a quiet, God bless you." Whatever the words, the meaning was clear. He wasn't just giving away a jacket. He was giving her his warmth, his protection, if only for that night. And then, as if nothing unusual had happened, Elvis turned back to the stage. The band scrambled. The guitarist struck a tentative chord. The drummer tapped back into rhythm. Within seconds, the music rolled again, filling the room. Elvis gripped the mic and picked up the next verse without missing a note. But something had changed. His voice cracked slightly on the first line, barely noticeable, except to those who had been there. Some fans later said it carried more power, more soul, as though the gesture had drained part of him and given it away. The audience surged with emotion. Some screamed louder than before, holding their scarves and signs high. Others simply stood in stunned silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. A few wiped tears, mascara streaking down their cheeks. For the girl, the jacket was heavy, but she held it close. She pressed her face into the collar, breathing in the faint smell of sweat, cologne, and stage lights baked into the fabric. Around her, strangers leaned in, some patting her shoulder, others trying to touch the jacket, as though it might carry magic. Meanwhile, Elvis moved through the rest of the set with renewed fire. He danced, spun, hit every note, but his eyes flicked back to that spot in the front row again and again, as if to make sure she was still wrapped in warmth. By the end of the show, word had already started spreading inside the hall. "Did you see it?" One woman whispered to another. "He gave her his jacket." Couples leaving the showroom buzzed with the story, knowing they had just witnessed something rare. Cameras clicked furiously at the finale, catching the girl still clutching the jacket as confetti fell. Those photographs would circulate for years, proving the story wasn't just a rumor. Backstage, Elvis reportedly chuckled when a bandmate asked him about it. "She looked cold," he said simply, as if that explained everything. And maybe it did, but for the girl and for the thousands who saw it, that jacket was more than fabric. It was proof that Elvis Presley, at the height of his power, could stop a show and choose compassion over spectacle. Still, what no one knew in that moment was that the story didn't end with the jacket. By the next morning, the story wasn't just inside the showroom. It was on breakfast tables across Las Vegas, splashed across headlines that couldn't believe what Elvis had done. The Las Vegas Sun carried the first photographs. Elvis Presley, crouched low, jacket outstretched. The flashbulbs had frozen it. Majestic, his hand still hovering above the girl's shoulders. The caption read, "The King stops the show." Radio DJs repeated it like gospel. One caller described the moment on air, her voice shaking as if she was still inside the hall. "He didn't care about the song," she said. "He cared about her. You should have seen her face." By noon, national wire services had picked it up. Small-town papers from Kentucky to California reprinted the photographs. The grainy images showed a girl wrapped in a jacket far too big for her, eyes wide, mouth open in disbelief. For Elvis fans, It was confirmation of something they had always believed. Their idol wasn't just a performer. He was a protector, someone who could see an individual in a sea of thousands. At the International Hotel, where Elvis was staying, reporters crowded the lobby, hoping for a comment. They didn't get one. Elvis said nothing about the moment publicly. He slipped out a side entrance, leaving fans and journalists to piece together the story themselves. Meanwhile, the girl whose name rarely appeared in print to protect her privacy went home with a jacket that still smelled of cologne and stage lights. According to neighbors, she showed it shyly to her family, her arms nearly lost in the sleeves. They begged her to put it somewhere safe, away from eager hands. Weeks later, she wrote a letter. In it, she thanked Elvis for the gesture and described how the warmth of the jacket stayed with her long after the show ended. Some say that letter reached him before another concert. A bandmate later claimed Elvis read it backstage, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his Bible. That detail can't be proven, but it fits the Elvis people, knew a man who carried kindness with him like a second skin. The jacket itself became almost mythical. Fans speculated about its whereabouts, trading theories in fan club newsletters. Some believed she would auction it. Others insisted she'd keep it hidden forever. But while people argued about the jacket, something else was happening. The photographs resurfaced again and again, each time sparking fresh waves of emotion. They weren't just snapshots of Elvis mid-performance. They were proof of interruption, proof that he had chosen compassion over spectacle in front of thousands. The story refused to fade. Radio hosts called it one of the most human moments in Elvis's long career. Fan magazines wrote entire features about the girl, describing her as the chosen one who had reminded the world of the man behind the legend. And then came the rumors. Some whispered that Elvis had asked after her in the weeks that followed, that he wanted to make sure she was safe, that she wasn't struggling. A few even claimed he told staff to track her down quietly, without fanfare. For a long time, no one knew if those rumors were true. But then something arrived. A cardboard box delivered to the girl's doorstep. Inside, there was no note on the outside, no clue as to what it contained. She opened it carefully, her hands trembling the way they had that night in the showroom. The jacket still hung in her closet, but this box carried something else. The cardboard flaps opened, and for a moment the family just stared. What lay inside wasn't merchandise, wasn't memorabilia, it was something far more personal, resting. On a bed of tissue paper was a guitar. Not just any guitar, but one signed in Elvis' familiar looping script. The black marker bled slightly into the glossy finish. The name clear as day, Elvis Presley, and tucked beside it, folded once, was a note. The girl's hand shook as she opened it. The handwriting matched the signature on the guitar. The words were simple, almost casual, yet overwhelming. You'll always have a seat in the front row, Elvis. For a long time, no one spoke. Her mother covered her mouth with both hands. Her father leaned against the wall, whispering, "My God." The girl herself traced her finger across the ink, as if to be sure it was real. Neighbors came by later that week. She showed them the guitar, the note, and of course, the jacket that still hung in her closet. Each visitor reacted the same way: stunned silence, then tears, then the inevitable retelling. You'll never believe what Elvis did for her. The gift changed the way people remembered that night. It wasn't just about a jacket anymore. It was about what came after, about the proof that Elvis had kept thinking of her, even after the stage lights dimmed. Years passed. The girl grew older, the jacket carefully preserved, the guitar never sold, never displayed in museums or auctions. It became part of family gatherings, a story told over and over. Children listened wide-eyed, their fingers grazing the rhinestones or the strings, as parents reminded them to be careful. That's history you're touching. For decades, the story lived quietly in that home until it resurfaced in the digital age. A grainy photo of Elvis crouched before the girl began circulating online. Someone scanned an old newspaper clipping, and soon the moment was everywhere. Social media posts captioned it simply, "The King giving his jacket to a shivering fan." Within days, it had millions of views. People weren't commenting about the set list or the energy of the concert, or even the music. They were commenting about the pause, about the silence, about the fact that Elvis had stopped the world's noise to see one person who needed him. One fan wrote, "Greatness isn't in the spotlight. It's in the moments when no one expects kindness, and you give it anyway." Another replied, "This is why Elvis will always be the king." Even people who weren't fans shared it. Teachers used it in classrooms as an example of empathy. Parents told their children, "See, this is how you treat people." The legend of Elvis Presley has always been tied to music, to fame, to tragedy. But this story, this jacket, this guitar, this note showed another side. It proved that compassion could become as legendary as any song. And in the end, maybe that's why the moment captured millions. Not because Elvis was perfect, not because he was untouchable, but because in the middle of his own storm of fame, he chose to notice a single shivering fan, a jacket, a guitar, a note, proof that sometimes the smallest gestures echo the loudest. Greatness isn't measured in spotlight or sound, it's measured in kindness that lingers. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room. And tell us in the comments, what's the greatest act of generosity you've ever witnessed in your own life?